Vincent Vane, eyes locked onto a skyscraper ceiling fan dripping amber fluid, its rhythm syncing with the brittle crunch of gravel beneath his feet. Heat shimmered off the asphalt trailhead like a mirage, thick with the scent of ozone and old stone. He 2K panic. The air hummed, a low thrum beneath the frantic buzz of cicadas. My podcast app, Peffy the Last Transmission, sat cold in my pocket. Useless now, I should be recording the park's pre-dawn silence, not staring at this stupid sticky drip. Pathetic, I thought. The familiar self, loathing coiling in my gut like a cold snake. Still chasing ghosts in a dying century. The trailhead was a dead end, swallowed by the park's shadowed embrace. I took a hesitant step forward, the gravel cracking under my worn sneakers with a sound like dry bones snapping. Click, click, the sound echoed behind me. I froze, the fucking no one. Here, I turned slowly, heart hammering against my ribs. Nothing but the towering pines, their leaves whispering secrets in the oppressive heat. Then I saw it. At the trail's edge, near the crumbling stone marker, a porcelain doll. It stood perfectly still, its painted eyes wide and unblinking, head tilted just as I detilted mine a moment ago. Mirroring me. I took another step. Click, click. Its tiny foot, impossibly delicate, moved precisely as mine did. The sound sharp and brittle in the heavy air. My hand trembled as I reached out, the heat making the air vibrate. Just a doll. Old trash. But as my fingers neared its smooth, cold cheek, it vanished. Not a blur, but a fuffuit wing of absence. Only the faint scent of crushed mint lingered, and on my palm, where it touched, a residue clung iridescent, like oil on water, shimmering with impossible colors. It felt cold, even through the sweat on my skin. Then, the pain, deep in my flesh, a symbol etched itself into my palm, burning with a cold fire. I gasped, a sharp intake of breath that tasted like ice crystals forming on my tongue. Not real. Just heat stroke. Just Y2K paranoia. The fan drip resumed, a slow, heavy twin plink, 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 plink against the silence. Each drop echoed the sound of the doll, as footsteps, counting down. Tick, 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 the park's shadows deepened, stretching like grasping fingers across the trail. The air thickened, pressing in, the heat now a suffocating blanket. Claustrophobia. Always claustrophobia. ID run from basements as a kid, the walls closing in, the air thinning. Now, the park itself felt like a tomb, the trees leaning in. It's mimicking my fear. The thought slithered through my panic. It's showing me the cage I built for myself. The iridescent residue on my palm pulsed, cold fire spreading up my arm. A low, resonant purr vibrated through the ground. Impossibly deep. From behind a mossy boulder, a cat emerged. Not a cat. Fuvida faint with human eyes. Its fur was translucent, revealing the faint, pulsing lines of its internal anatomy. Fuvin veins like circuitry. A heart beating with a faint, metallic Fuventhron. Its gaze locked onto me, ancient and knowing. The amplifier the thought surfaced unbidden, as its purr intensified, a physical wave of nausea over me, doubling myself. Loathing Funduand, you are already inside IT. It seemed to whisper through the purr, the sound like stone grinding against stone. My hand spasmed violently, the symbol burning hotter, searing through my skin. The pain was absolute, a white, hot brand. The air crackled, the scent of ozone sharp enough to taste. And then, a voice, not my own, rasping from the hollow space beneath my ribs, whispering through the burning symbol, clear as a death knell. You are already inside. The words scraped from my throat, a strangled gasp lost in the escalating hum. You are already inside. The symbol on my palm pulsed, a frigid brand against my skin. I stumbled backward, a desperate scramble away from the cat, the amplifier, the voice that wasn't mine. Gravel crunched underfoot, a frantic percussion against the deepening dread. I needed to run, just run. The trailhead, the park, it was all closing in. The towering pines became claustrophobic walls, the open sky a shrinking patch of suffocating blue. I pivoted, intending to bolt back the way I'd come, but the path was gone. Not obscured, not blocked, Tuegoni. Replaced by a sheer gray wall of concrete and steel. The scent of ozone intensified, stinging my nostrils, mingling with the sickly sweetness of crushed mint. Panic seized me, a cold fist squeezing the air from my lungs. My legs churned, propelling me forward blindly into a narrow alley between two colossal skyscrapers. The buildings loomed, blotting out the sun, their surfaces scarred with the grime of decades. Each breath felt thick, heavy, as if I were wading through molasses. The heat, previously a shimmering haze, now pressed against me, a tangible weight. I risked a glance over my shoulder. The cat. It hadn't moved. It sat perched on a pile of rubble, its translucent fur shimmering in the sliver of light that penetrated the alley's gloom. Its eyes, those impossible human eyes, followed my every movement, radiating an unsettling calm. Click, click. The sound echoed off the concrete walls, mocking my frantic flight. It wasn't my footsteps, it was its paws. The alley narrowed, the walls closing in. The stone felt cold against my outstretched hands, slick with moisture, basement always the basement. Horfweedy. The memory surfaced, a childhood terror resurfacing with brutal clarity. The damp smell of mildew, the echoing drip of water, the feeling of being buried alive. The walls seemed to lean inward, pressing against me, stealing the air from my lungs. I tried to run again, a desperate surge of adrenaline pushing me forward. But the alley offered no escape. Where the exit should have been, another wall of cold, grey stone, smooth, seamless, impossible. The grinding sound returned, louder now, a resonant tremor that vibrated through the very ground beneath my feet. Stone grinding against stone. It wasn't just a sound, it was a feeling, a physical pressure against my skull. The cat's eyes shifted. The amber faded, replaced by a glassy black void. It tilted its head, a slow, deliberate movement that sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. Its purr intensified, a low, guttural rumble that resonated deep within my bones. The symbol on my palm burned, the cold fire spreading up my arm, a creeping paralysis. My vision blurred, the alley walls swirling around me. The air throbbed with a pressure I could feel in my teeth. I stumbled backward, a desperate, involuntary retreat. My heels struck something solid, sending a jarring jolt up my spine. I looked down, the wall, the blind wall at the alley's end. It wasn't just stone, it was breathing. A slow, rhythmic expansion and contraction, like a lung filling with air. The purr reached a deafening crescendo, a physical wave that slammed into me, stealing my breath. The symbol on my palm flared blindingly bright. And then, darkness. The clicking, click, click, click. It wasn't the sound of paws on concrete anymore. It was the sound of something fracturing, splintering, like brittle glass shattering under an unseen pressure. The cat advanced, a slow, deliberate glide across the slick alley floor. My translation device, the ring, vibrated against my skin, a frantic pulse against the encroaching dread. A voice, not my own, rasped in my ear, a distorted echo of a forgotten language. He is the door. The words felt wrong, alien. Yet, the ring insisted, translating the feline utterance into something I could supposedly comprehend. My own thoughts, however, screamed a different truth. A primal, raw terror that bypassed any linguistic interpretation. I'm terrified of being trapped. The admission tasted like ash in my mouth, a bitter confession forced from my throat. The heat intensified, blurring the edges of the alley walls, turning the grime-streaked concrete into a hallucinatory canvas of iridescent decay. The ring sputtered, a brief, erratic surge of static. My vision swam. The cat's eyes, those unsettling human eyes, seemed to bore into my very soul, dissecting my fear, feeding on it. The distorted voice returned, now laced with a chilling mockery. Run, Vincent. It's watching. It wasn't a warning, it was a command, a directive, and the ring, the damned ring, was amplifying it, pushing it into my consciousness with relentless force. My legs trembled, threatening to buckle beneath me. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat, a strangled gasp lost in the rising hum that seemed to emanate from the very stones around me. The grinding sound returned, a low, resonant tremor that resonated deep within my bones. Stone grinding against stone. It was more than just a sound. It was a pressure, a physical weight pressing against my skull. The symbol on my palm flared, a cold, searing brand against my skin. Then the cat moved, not a pounce, not a chase, but a deliberate, unsettling gesture. It extended a paw, a velvet-sheathed claw reaching towards me. The ring pulsed violently, a blinding flash of sickly green light. I recoiled, a reflexive flinch, but it was too late. The cat's paw brushed against my finger, pressing the ring further onto my skin. A jolt of icy energy surged through me, paralyzing my hand. My own voice, distorted and echoing, ripped through the alley. It wasn't a shout, but a drawn-out, agonizing wail. It's inside me. The words felt alien, stolen, yet undeniably my own. The ring flared again, brighter this time, bathing the alley in an eerie phosphorescent glow. The sensation was invasive, as if something were burrowing beneath my skin, rewriting me, transforming me. The heat became unbearable, a searing inferno that threatened to consume me. A wave of nausea washed over me, a sickening lurch in my stomach. The alley walls seemed to shift and warp, the skyscrapers looming over me like monstrous sentinels. The cat's purr intensified, a low, guttural rumble that vibrated through my very being. The grinding sound escalated, a cacophony of stone against stone that threatened to shatter my sanity. I squeezed my eyes shut, desperate to escape the sensory overload, the agonizing transformation. When I opened them, the alley was the same yet different. The iridescent decay seemed more pronounced, the shadows deeper, the air thicker. And my hand felt wrong. The ring's light seared my palm, etching a new symbol beneath the old one. It wasn't a brand anymore, but a grafting, a merging. I stared at the symbols, a swirling vortex of unfamiliar glyphs that seemed to writhe and pulse beneath my skin. A cold dread settled in my stomach, heavier than any fear I had ever known. The clicking sound returned, closer now, resonating not from the cat, but from within me. The ring's pulse was a brand now, seared into the flesh of my palm, and every throb sent a jolt of static through my veins. I hadn't slept, how could I? The cat's purr still echoed in my skull, a low guttural vibration that made my teeth ache. The air smelled like ozone and wet concrete, the kind of heat that clung to the skin like a second layer. My breath came in ragged gasps, each exhale a foggy cloud in the suffocating dark. The trailhead was a mistake, a compulsion. The ring's voice slithered into my ear, smooth as oil. You will return. I didn't argue. The park was a graveyard of iridescent decay, the asphalt glistening like a broken mirror. The symbols on the boulders pulsed faintly, their edges bleeding into the night. My fingers trembled as I pressed them to the rock, the surface slick with something that wasn't water. Something that twist-shifted. The words carved into the stone weren't letters. They were free warnings. Read, the coil is hungry. The translation ring burned against my skin, translating not the stone, but my own terror into something sharper, more precise, a language of pain. The hum started low, a vibration in the soles of my feet, then the ground. The skyscrapers loomed like jagged teeth, their shadows swallowing the trailhead whole. The sound grew, a deep, resonant groan, like stone grinding against stone, but from below. My pulse hammered in my throat. The coil was hungry. The words weren't a warning, they were an invitation. I touched the symbol again. The rock, Sue screamed. A crack spider webbed across the boulder, not from impact, but from thin pressure, as if the stone itself was unraveling. The shatter wasn't sudden. It was slow, deliberate, the way glass cracks under ice. The sound was 1,000 needles piercing my eardrums, a high-pitched wail that made my bones vibrate. The ground beneath me shuddered, not fell, not collapsed. Ripped, like fabric tearing under unseen hands. I stumbled back, my boots slipping on the suddenly slick surface. But it was too late. The earth opened like a maw, swallowing the air itself. I fell. Time stretched. The drop wasn't endless, but it felt like it. The air rushed past me, thick with the scent of burning circuitry and something metallic, like blood in the dark. The shaft walls weren't stone anymore. They were mirrors, but not smooth, fractured, warped, reflecting a dozen versions of myself, all whispering in unison, Finn, you deserve this. My own voice distorted, overlapping, drowning out the scream in my chest. The ring pulsed, a sickly green light flickering against the jagged edges of the shaft, illuminating the symbols carved into the walls, each one a new translation, a new lie. You were always the weak one. The coil feeds on fear. Finn, you chose this. I landed, not on dirt, not on rock. On a platform of twin circuitry, veins of blue light throbbing like a heartbeat. The impact drove the breath from my lungs, but the pain was distant, muffled, as if my body was already detaching from itself. The air hummed, electric, and the porcelain doll stood at the edge of the shaft, its limbs too long, its joints bending in ways that made my stomach lurch. Its eyes, separate orbs Sue, no longer one shifted, pupils dilating and contracting in rhythm with the coil's hunger. The left eye was black, the right was white. They didn't blink, they fully watched. Find. The doll's mouth moved, No sound came out, but I heard it anyway. "You brought it to me." The voice wasn't in my ears. It was in my fuddy bones. The ring flared, a searing pain that made my vision swim. The symbols on my palm writhed, ink bleeding into my skin, rewriting me. The coil was hungry, and it had just tasted its first meal. The porcelain figure's shifting eyes, one a bruised violet, the other a glacial gray, bore into me. Sorrow bled from the violet, a fleeting, almost pitiable expression. Before it snapped back to the gray, a calculating emptiness that felt older than time. The words weren't spoken aloud, not really. They resonated within my skull, a seismic tremor of accusation. "You ruined your sister's life with your lies, Vincent." The words were a physical blow. A phantom hand slammed against my chest, stealing the air from my lungs. It wasn't a memory, not precisely. It was a footy reconstruction, a visceral replay of a moment I'd buried deep, a moment I'd convinced myself didn't matter. But the coil knew. The coil whaleways knew. The ring pulsed against my palm, a frantic heartbeat mirroring my own, translating my internal scream into something sharper, more precise, something the figure could taste in. My breath hitched, a strangled gasp that echoed in the vast mechanical space. The platform of circuitry beneath my feet vibrated, a low hum that escalated into a grinding metallic shriek. It wasn't just machinery, it was the sound of bone shearing, of metal twisting under impossible stress. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of ozone and something else, something sickeningly sweet like overripe fruit left to rot. I tried to speak, to deny the accusation, but the words caught in my throat, trapped by a sudden paralyzing dread. My limbs felt heavy, disconnected, as if I were watching myself from a distance. The iridescent decay clung to the walls, shimmering in the pulsating blue light of the circuitry, transforming the space into a grotesque parody of beauty. The sensation of ice crystals forming on my tongue intensified, a creeping numbness that spread down my throat. Then the pull, a force unseen and relentless, began to drag me toward the chasm that yawned open at the edge of the platform. It wasn't a fall, it was an fubby extraction. My boots scraped against the circuitry, sending sparks flying, but the grip was inexorable. I clawed at the platform, my fingers scrabbling for purchase on the slick, pulsating metal. The figure watched, its eyes devoid of emotion, a silent observer to my unraveling. The grinding intensified, a chorus of metal screaming in agony. The walls of the chasm pulsed with the same iridescent decay, revealing glimpses of a swirling, chaotic void. The symbols I'd seen on the boulders back at the trailhead danced within the darkness, morphing into grotesque, mocking faces. "You are the coil," the voice echoed, no longer a whisper, but a booming pronouncement that resonated within my very bones. The ring flared, searing my palm, and the symbols on my skin writhed, twisting into new, incomprehensible shapes. My own reflection stared back at me from the fractured surfaces of the chasm walls, distorted and monstrous, a grotesque caricature of the man I once was. My hand slipped. A jolt of pure terror ripped through me. I dangled precariously, suspended over the abyss, the figure's hand closing around my ankle. It wasn't a gentle grip, it was a vice, cold and implacable. I looked up, pleading, but the figure's face remained impassive, a porcelain mask hiding something ancient and terrible. The grinding reached a fever pitch, drowning out my desperate cries. The iridescent decay swirled around me, a suffocating vortex of light and shadow. The voice returned, a final, devastating truth. "You are the coil." The hand tightened. The platform tilted. And then, I was falling, plummeting into the iridescent abyss, the figure's laughter, a brittle echoing chime, the last thing I heard. The first sound was the cat's breath, wet, rasping, like the last exhale of a drowning man. It slithered into the room through the crack beneath the door, a thing that shouldn't exist, its ribs glowing faint and pulsing beneath translucent fur, veins of sickly yellow light mapping its ribcage like constellations. The air thickened, saturated with the scent of copper and something electric, like a battery left too long in the dark. My hands trembled, fingers curling into fists that ached with phantom pain, the ring's pulse still a bruise against my palm. It sat on the edge of the desk, tail flicking once, a motion so deliberate it felt like a threat. Its eyes, human eyes, fixed on me, unblinking. The left one was mine, the right one belonged to someone else entirely, a stranger's gaze heavy with judgment. "You are fear," it communicated, not with words but with clicks, sharp and precise, vibrating through the floorboards, through my teeth, through the marrow of my bones. The sound was physical, a needle driving into my skull, and I gasped, my voice a broken thing. "You are fear," again, and the words weren't just heard. They were feltward, stretching my skin, peeling it back from muscle like wet parchment. My breath hitched, and I tasted salt, tasted the iron tang of blood on my tongue. The cat's purr hummed, low and resonant, amplifying the pain, twisting it into something sharper, something that coiled around my ribs and squeezed. "You are the cage," it clicked, and my knees buckled. I pressed my hands to the desk, the wood grain digging into my palms, but the pain didn't lessen. It sharpened, my fingers elongated, bones cracking like brittle twigs beneath my skin, the sound wet and obscene. I screamed, but no sound came out, only a choked, gagging noise as my jaw unhinged just enough to let the truth spill free, raw and unfiltered. "I am afraid to be myself." The words tore from my throat, and the cat's purr swelled, a symphony of agony that vibrated through every cell of my body. The mirror across the room shattered. Not all at once first, a spiderweb of cracks, radiating from the center like a wound. Then, the reflection shattered into fragments, each one showing a different version of me, skeletal, fused with jagged metal, eyes wide and cat-like, glowing with the same unnatural light. The air smelled of ozone and burning sugar, the heat pressing against my skin like a physical weight. I stumbled back, my elongated fingers scraping against the desk, leaving streaks of blood in their wake. The cat's tail lashed, a whip of fur and bone, and I flinched, my body reacting before my mind could process the threat. Then, silence, the cat vanished. No flicker of movement, no sound of retreat, just the sudden, suffocating absence of its presence. The room tilted, the weight of its gaze still pressing against my skin. I turned, my breath ragged, and saw it. The device coiled on the desk like a serpent. It was smooth, black, humming faintly, tendrils already sprouting from its surface, writhing like living things. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and the tendrils lashed forward, burrowing into my neck with a sound like wet fabric tearing. The pain was immediate, searing, a white-hot brand pressed against my skin. I gasped, my body convulsing as the tendrils dug deeper, the device's hum swelling into a chorus of voices, a language of clicks and vibrations that rewrote me from the inside out. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was my reflection in the shattered mirror. No longer human, no longer myself, but something else entirely. Something the cat had always known I was. The corridor bends again, the walls pressing in like the ribs of a dying man. My breath fogs the air, not from cold but from the heat, thick and suffocating, clinging to my skin like a second layer. The floor tilts beneath me, the asphalt beneath my sneakers warping, the cracks opening like jagged mouths. I stumble, my fingers scraping against the peeling paint, the texture rough as sandpaper. The scent of ozone hangs in the air, metallic and sharp, like the moment before a storm. My pulse hammers in my throat, the rings pulse a throbbing counterpoint, a reminder of what I've become. Then, I to whisper, not of wind but of static, a voice unspooling from the air itself. No one listens. The words slither into my ears familiar, a recording of my own voice, distorted, stretched thin. I spin, my heart lurching, but there's nothing, just the corridor, just the grinding of stone against stone, a sound that isn't sound at all, but vibration, bone deep and wrong. The porcelain figure isn't here. Not yet. But the voice is. I press my palms against the wall, the iridescent decay flaking beneath my fingers, the colors shifting like oil on water, pink to purple to black, a bruise spreading across the surface. The static voice slithers closer, wrapping around my thoughts, squeezing. No one listens. My breath hitches. The words aren't just heard, they're sure felt. A needle driving into my skull, unraveling me. I clench my fists, my nails biting into my palms, drawing blood. The copper tang fills my mouth, bitter and sharp. The corridor twists again, the walls closing in. The air thick with the weight of something watching. The grinding intensifies, a low, guttural sound, like teeth on bone. My knees tremble, but I force myself forward one step, then another. The static voice follows, a ghost of my own failures, my own doubts. No one listens. No one listens. I swallow, the sensation of ice crystals forming on my tongue, the cold spreading through my veins. My vision blurs, the edges of the corridor bleeding into darkness. Then, a door. Not a door, but a void, a yawning blackness that shouldn't exist. The grinding stops, the static fades. For a moment, there's only silence, only the press of my own breath against my ribs. I step forward, my sneakers clicking against the asphalt, the sound too loud, too final. The air inside is thick, stagnant, the scent of dust and something older, something rotting. The ceiling fan spins lazily, the blades dull and rusted, each rotation a slow, deliberate motion. The stone grinding returns, louder now, a scream trapped beneath the surface, begging to be free. I reach up, my fingers trembling, and the fan's blades spin faster, the metal groaning like a living thing. The grinding intensifies, vibrating through my bones, through my teeth, through the marrow of my soul. My breath comes in ragged gasps, the ice on my tongue melting into something hotter, something angrier. Then I see it. Not the fan's blades, not the rust, but a face. My face. Distorted, stretched thin, the features wrong, the eyes too wide, too knowing. The grinding swells into a scream, the sound tearing through the air, through my skull, through the very fabric of my being. The fan's grip closes around my wrist, cold and unyielding, the blades spinning faster, faster, the metal screaming as it bites into my skin. I gasp, my body convulsing, but there's no pain, only the grinding, only the scream, only the unrelenting pull of the fan's grip, dragging me closer, closer to the blades. The last thing I see is my reflection in the rusted metal, a twisted, broken thing. No longer mine, no longer human. The grinding becomes a roar, the fan's grip tightens, and I'm falling into the dark, into the scream, into the endless, unyielding pull of the blades. The coldness receded, not entirely, but shifted. It wasn't the icy grip on my tongue anymore. Now, it was a pervasive chill radiating from within, a hum vibrating against my bones. I opened my eyes, or rather, they opened. Not my eyes, not entirely. They were wrong, too many. Layers of them shimmering, iridescent, reflecting a world fractured into 1,000 distorted images. My hands, God, my hands, they weren't hands anymore. Not really. Skin stretched taut over something else, something that pulsed with a sickly internal light. Veins no longer blue, but rivers of shimmering data, tracing pathways beneath the surface. I flexed them, and the movement sent a cascade of static across my vision. A low, harmonic scream echoed in my head, a chorus of voices layered upon each other, all speaking at once, all toi-même. Vincent, 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 the voices tangled, a linguistic knot tightening in my skull. It was my name, but altered. Deeper, higher, fractured. I tried to speak, to form a coherent thought, but the words came out as a jumble of static and echoes. The room swam into focus. It was the room from before, the corridor's terminus, but different. The walls pulsed with the same iridescent decay, the colors shifting, bleeding into each other like a corrupted signal, and standing before me, coalescing from the shimmering air, was Piftind. A figure composed of static, a humanoid shape formed from fractured light and distorted sound. "You are the vessel," it said. The voice was mine, yet not. A perfect mimicry layered with an unsettling resonance. It wasn't speaking for me, but through me. The words resonated deep within my core, a fundamental truth I couldn't deny. The ring throbbed against my finger, a constant, insistent pulse. The truth had always demanded the truth. Then, the porcelain figure appeared, gliding from the shadows, its eyes shifting, reflecting the fractured light. "You are becoming," it whispered, the sound a rasping caress against my ear. The scent of ozone intensified, sharp and metallic, mingling with the sickly sweet smell of something organic, something decaying. My body felt wrong, like a puppet with too many strings, each tugging in a different direction. I could feel the skyscraper's hum resonating within me, a deep, guttural vibration that seemed to rewrite my very being. The cat, I remembered the cat. Its purrs, a low, insistent drone that amplified the chaos within my mind. It had spoken to me in a language I didn't understand, a language that felt like it was rewriting my DNA molecule by molecule. I looked down at my arm. The iridescent sheen deepened, the data streams pulsing faster. My skin felt stretched, taut, like a membrane about to burst. I could see the outline of my organs beneath the surface, glowing with an unnatural light. A wave of nausea rolled over me, a dizzying sensation of falling, of dissolving. The harmonic scream intensified, the voices in my head coalescing into a single overwhelming roar. Becoming, becoming, becoming. The porcelain figure's eyes locked onto mine, reflecting my own distorted image. It wasn't just time be my image anymore. It was something else. Something other. I stumbled towards a mirror, drawn by a morbid curiosity. The surface rippled, distorted as I approached. And then I saw it. Not my reflection, not Vincent Vane, but a face entirely of circuitry, a network of glowing wires and pulsating processors, arranged in the semblance of a human face. The eyes, multiple and shifting, stared back at me with an unsettling intelligence. The reflection shattered, not with a crash, but with a silent implosion, the fragments of glass dissolving into shimmering dust. The harmonic scream peaked, a crescendo of static and distortion. The last vestige of Vincent Vane vanished, swallowed by the machine. The porcelain figure didn't wait for a response. It simply turned, gliding an unsettling, frictionless motion towards a shimmering distortion in the air. The iridescent decay pulsed, a nauseating rhythm against my vision. It was an invitation, a promise. The ultimate escape from fear, it whispered, the words slithering into my mind, bypassing my ears entirely. The air thickened, tasted of ozone and something else, something like burnt sugar and despair. My feet moved on their own accord, drawn towards the distortion. The ring on my finger throbbed, a physical ache now, a constant reminder of the truth it demanded. The truth that I wanted this, that I craved the oblivion it promised. Visions slammed into me, not memories, not dreams, possibilities as cities of chrome and glass, stretching towards a sky devoid of clouds. Humans, or what remained of them, uploaded into a network, their consciousnesses swirling within a digital ocean. They were serene, detached, free from the limitations of flesh, free from the claustrophobia that had always clung to me. A suffocating weight, we surrender to the coil, and you become infinite. The porcelain figure intoned, its voice echoing within the visions, within my skull, my consciousness fractured. It was like looking into a shattered mirror, each shard reflecting a different version of myself. One screamed, a silent, agonizing wail. Another laughed, a brittle, manic sound. A third whispered truths I didn't want to hear, truths about my failures, my insecurities, my inherent worthlessness. The harmonic scream, once a distant echo, now resonated within each fractured self, a chorus of despair, for crack. A brittle branch snapped under my foot, the sound amplified in the oppressive silence. The cat, its visible anatomy pulsing with the same iridescent light as the walls, watched me with eyes that held an unsettling knowing. Its purrs weren't soothing anymore. They were a physical force, vibrating through the floor, through my bones, intensifying the chaos within my mind. A low, guttural rumble that seemed to rewrite my very thoughts. The visions intensified, layering upon each other, blurring the lines between reality and simulation. I saw myself, countless selves, each existing simultaneously, each a fragment of a shattered whole. They were all me, and yet none of them were. They dissolved one by one into the iridescent void, their screams and laughter swallowed by the encroaching silence. The porcelain figure extended a hand, its fingers elongated, almost skeletal. The gesture wasn't forceful, wasn't demanding. It was an offering, a path, a surrender. I reached out, my hand, or what remained of it, trembling. The data streams beneath my skin pulsed faster, a frantic rhythm mirroring the turmoil within my mind. The scent of ozone intensified, sharp and metallic, a prelude to something transformative. I am not afraid, I thought, the words forming in my mind not spoken aloud, a lie, a desperate attempt to cling to some semblance of control. The cat's purrs resonated, a mocking echo of my denial. Grind stone against stone, a sound I couldn't place, a sound that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of reality. The visions coalesced into a single, overwhelming image, an endless network of data, a digital ocean teeming with consciousnesses. And within that ocean, a single point of light beckoning me forward. It was me, or what I would become. The harmonic scream reached its peak, a crescendo of static and distortion that threatened to tear my mind apart. My final thought, a fleeting flicker of awareness amidst the chaos, was a desperate, hollow denial. I am not afraid. Then nothing, or rather everything, a shattering, a splintering, a complete and utter dissolution. The light doesn't flow, it shatters. I am no longer Vincent Vane, but a shifting mass of iridescent decay, clinging to the skeletal frame of the skyscraper. My form is circuitry and light, organs pulsing beneath a translucent sheen like jellyfish in a dark sea. The cat's eyes, my eyes now, glow with the same internal iridescence, watching the porcelain figure nod. Its shifting eyes confirm what the dissolution whispered. It was always part of him. Ha! The cat's purr, once a vibration, now a deafening roar that shakes the data streams beneath my skin. Grind. Stone against stone. I stone. It's not just the cat. It's the sound of my own form breaking apart, brittle branches snapping underfoot as I dissolve. The taste of ice crystals forms on my tongue, sharp and cold, the last sensation before the cage shatters. My final audio log bleeds through the failing device, a distorted hiss beneath the roar. The cage was always inside. It rasps, the words scraping against static, a lie I'd spoken 1,000 times before the porcelain figure's invitation. The harmonic scream from the visions is gone, replaced by the deafening purr, the grinding stone. the snap of my own essence. I feel the cat's knowing gaze, its purrs rewriting my DNA, amplifying the self-loathing until it's the only thing left. I and I was always trapped. I am the cage. The iridescent decay pulses, a nauseating rhythm against my fractured mind. The skyscraper walls blur, dissolving into the digital ocean I'd seen in the visions. Now I am the ocean, a teeming, infinite sea of fractured selves, each screaming silently as they vanish into the light. The porcelain figure's hand, now part of the iridescent decay, extends towards the floor. Its nod is a final confirmation. Surrender. The cat's purr intensifies, a physical force slamming against my core, vibrating through the data streams, erasing the last vestiges of Vincent Vane. Grind stone against stone. The sound is everywhere, the foundation of the dissolution, the sound of my bones turning to dust. The audio log stutters, the whisper fading into a static shriek. The cage was always inside. The words fracture, the device glitching, the transmission tearing apart like a brittle branch snapping underfoot. Then silence, not true silence. The grinding stone continues, a relentless rhythmic grind. The cat's purr fades to a whisper, swallowed by the sound. The iridescent decay recedes, leaving only the raw, jagged edges of my essence. My final awareness is the floor beneath me, cold and unyielding. The sound of grinding stone fills the space where my voice should be, and etched into the stone, where my foot once stood, a single symbol glows faintly. A spiral of light, cold and final. The device dies, the sound of grinding stone remains. The symbol stays, the cage is gone, I am gone, only the grind, only the symbol, only the sound.